What's up, everyone? Welcome to another edition, another episode of the Morgan Thomas Show. I'm your host and producer, Morgan Thomas, and joining me is my co-host, Big Al, Alan Adams. Welcome to the show again. Welcome to another week, Al.
Man, it's good to be here, especially on a wonderful Veterans Day. So we want to give a big shout out to all our veterans out there. One special one in particular, you're a wonderful show host, everybody. So make sure you give Morgan a special shout out. Also, a good shout out to our Clemson veterans as well. So we really appreciate everything you guys have done for us and continue to do for us.
I appreciate that, man. Happy Veterans Day. Glad you're here. Glad the Tigers are now 10-0 and rolling in. And we're going to be talking about that. We got a good lineup for you. But let's get into our first topic of the night, Al. I know everybody's excited about this. Everybody has their own opinion. But we're going through our top 10 college football rankings. Alan, I'm going to start us off with number one. I really think I looked at this and I almost put Clemson up at number one. I really did. But I decided to put LSU as number one because of their resume and the fact that they won that big, huge away game in Tuscaloosa, which, we called.
So I just want to make this clear. We are giving our top 10, not what we necessarily think the pollsters are going to rate them, right?
Yeah, we're not talking about like what's going to happen tomorrow night because you never know, but this is really us.
Okay. Yeah, I think ours mine is definitely going to be different than theirs. I'm pretty sure, but yes, I actually have LSU as number one as well. I mean, you can't leave LSU out of number one. They have the most impressive resume. They have the most impressive wins, especially after Tuscaloosa this weekend for sure. So we agree there on number one.
LSU, to me, a top 5 offense. They can hang with anybody. My only concern is that they're giving up points with anybody too. They're really kind of like just a little bit better than Alabama. I don't know if they can really stop stop a good offense, and I think if you can hang with them, I think you got a really good chance at beating them. I wonder what's going to happen when they meet a good defense. Now, they did meet a good defense, I believe, in Florida, but that was a home game, so I give them a little credit for the home game there. And Florida hung with them until kind of the third end of the third, fourth quarter. For me, number two, I know this is going to be surprising. People are going to go back to the old ranking we did a couple of weeks ago and say, well, how did they jump so much? But really, Al, the more I look at it, I'm going to tell you that I have cemented my confidence again in Clemson. They don't have the resume, but they're a top 5 offense, a top 5 defense, and they've played, even though they haven't played ranked teams, they've played top level offenses and shut them down. So I'm going with Clemson number 2.
Look, I don't have a problem with Clemson number 2. As a matter of fact, if we're going, I try to base mine less off the eye test, because when they do that on the big shows like ESPN, it's artificially inflated, with all the propaganda from the SEC out there. So right now I'm going based on resume, and I've got Ohio State number 2. They've played some lower level teams. They do have a good win, convincing win against Wisconsin, a pretty good team there. But they've just absolutely blown everybody out. So they've done a good job. I'm having them at number 2 right now.
Okay. For me, I like Ohio State, and I'm split between them and Clemson. I don't give them credit for having a ranked win against Michigan State because I really think Michigan State is one of those teams just can't win big games.
Yeah.
Same goes for Wisconsin. They as the year has gone on, Wisconsin has turned into a team that basically is so one-dimensional that they hang on their defense, but then now they can't win games. So I feel like Wisconsin's kind of fallen off the planet. They're even out of the Heisman race. We know Joe Burrow is now obviously the Heisman winner. We can go ahead and say that after winning that game. I think I think most people are going to give that to him. So LSU has their first Heisman winner in a lot of years, I think. And I'm going to go ahead and call that. But I got Ohio State, again, a top 5 offense and really the number 1 defense as far as total defense goes. They've played offense. Really, they're the only team, Al, as far as defense goes, that has only one team has scored 20 or more. Same thing with Clemson. Only one team has scored 20 or more, and Ohio State's the same. So I think those are 2 stacked teams. To be honest with you, I think when it's all said and done, you're going to see a Clemson Tiger, Ohio State Buckeye national championship.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised with that at all. I have Clemson at number 3, actually. After being kind of punished for their close win at UNC, they kind of took their rightful spot inside the top 4, and, they're not going to relinquish that unless they were to lose one from here on out. And, there's nobody they're not going to be heavily favored against. So I have Clemson at number 3. I definitely think they can make, you can make an argument at the end of the day, for having them at number 1 if you want to use the eye test or something like that. But I think simply based on resume, number 3 is a good spot for them.
Now, I know this is one that I don't really want to say because it is another team from that conference. But the only team they lost to is LSU. Now, granted, I do not like the fact that they did not have the lead at all at home the entire game. They were down by 20. It was almost a repeat of the national championship Saturday. And then they finally started running the ball more and getting back into it. Their defense kind of stepped up towards the end of the game, and they brought it within 1 score. But I've got Alabama. They're still by far the best offense this side of Oklahoma that's left outside of LSU, Clemson, Ohio State. Alabama's a top 10 offense, not a top 25 defense by any means. Anybody can score on them. But they do have the offense to hang with, I think, just about anybody. And when you look at the rest of the 10 that we're going to list, being that Oklahoma has now decided that they're not going to hold anybody back, they're going to let everybody score 40 on them. I think that the only good offense left is Alabama, so I'm giving Alabama my number 4 slot.
And this is where I knew we were going to start to differ here, and it's kind of funny because I know you'll probably be more in line with the BCS poll that comes out. But actually, I went with Oregon at number 4. They're still looking good. A team that continues to roll despite their opening week loss to Auburn in a game that they really outplayed Auburn the entire game. I really think they're going to continue to run the table. I thought they would lose that game and run the table to get a possible spot in the playoffs. And it looks to me right now that they're headed for, a one-loss Utah team in the Pac-12 championship, assuming they continue to win, of course. So right now, I have Oregon at number 4.
I kind of figured you were going to lean towards an Oregon. You've been kind of talking about them all season, saying don't sleep on them. Don't say that they don't count them out after that one loss to Auburn, even though they had it in the bag and they kind of they just didn't want to adjust. That was my frustration there. I have them a little bit lower because I ding them for not adjusting in that game. If they would have just turned it around and started stopping the run, which they really couldn't against, I believe, Whitlock. He basically ran all over him and then allowed Bo Nix to go off a play action and throw a prayer up.
Yeah.
But that's my top 4. That's Alan's top 4. Let us know what you think. Are we way off base? Is there somebody that you would have that we don't have? I'm seeing Minnesota. I'm going to get to Minnesota. I'll tell you that. I think that unjustly they're not being jumped up. I think that they're a better team than 17th. That's for sure. I think they're definitely a top 10 team. But there are some problems with Minnesota too. So for me, my 5th one is going to be one that's not Oregon. I really do think that Utah, with that stout defense that they have, is going to, they don't play Oregon until the championship game, presumably. I'm going to say Utah goes and beats Oregon in that Pac-12 championship game. So I'm giving them my number 5.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with that. I have Utah a little bit lower than that. I have actually Minnesota at number 5. Okay, I know that's a lot higher than a lot of people would have them, but at the end of the day, they haven't lost a game. Minnesota is undefeated. The committee showed them no love when they ranked them 17th. And then the alleged number 4 team, they actually had beat pretty well there. They had a little comeback at the end of the game, but Minnesota was scoring like crazy in that game. They did a really good job in that game. And they actually showed some pretty good defense until, like I said, near the end of the game where they decided to come back a little bit and Penn State made it real close there. But I like what I've seen from Minnesota. They have no choice but to make a huge jump in the polls here if they thought Penn State was number 4 and Minnesota beat them. It's actually a game I picked as Minnesota covering the spread there with a possible win. I don't know if you picked that or not, but yeah, it's looking good for the Golden Gophers right now, so I'm going to have them at number 5.
I ended up going with Minnesota for my Yahoo Pick'em, and we'll talk about what our rankings are right now. We'll go over that a little bit further in our second segment. Stay tuned for our second segment, Picks Against the Spread, Week 12. Alan and I'm 58%. Alan's still at that 61%, but I'm getting closer to him. Beat him by, I think, 3 games this weekend, so we'll take a look at that next segment. But continuing with this, after Utah, I really didn't want to put this team either because I think this team is going to get a lot of credit because of their conference that they're in, but really hadn't shown me anything other than beating Florida on a neutral field. And I don't even know if they're going to win this weekend against Auburn, but I have to say that, well, we'll talk about it more when I get into it. But Georgia, as of right now, I got them at 6, and I'll tell you right now, it's because of their defense. It's because of their run defense that keeps them in games. Their offense is not explosive at all. So I really think there's a huge gap between really Alabama and the Utah Georgias of the world as far as offense goes. It's just, night and day. And then my 7th one is Oregon. So kind of the team you talked about. The only difference is I kind of flipped Oregon and Utah and then threw Georgia in the middle. I felt like a Pac-12 team needed some representation above 3 SEC teams because I think that there's more parity than people like to admit. It's not SEC and everyone else. The Big 12, the Pac-12 has some good teams. The Big 10 has some pretty good teams. The Big 12, I don't know, but the ACC definitely has teams that nobody wants to give them credit for. Mm-hmm. Man, if they only had 2 losses, they would get a lot of credit. But a lot of the coastal teams have 3 losses or 4 losses, and that gives them less credit. But they're still good teams, and they're difficult teams, and they're high-scoring offenses. But so I give Utah there 5, Georgia 6, Oregon 7. What you got?
I actually have Alabama at number 6. I mean, they don't have any good wins on the season. They have blown a lot of people out, but they don't have any wins over big teams, I guess I should say. And their one loss is a close loss to what I have as the number 1 team in the country, and you have as the number 1 team in the country. So you don't want to ding them too much for that. But it knocks them down a little bit more. I have them down at number 6 because it was a home loss, and that matters to me. But they have the Tua wasn't 100% healthy, excuse in their back pocket. So that'll kind of, I'm sure, keep the committee on their side in the near future. So I still think they're in the conversation, of course, as everybody does. As a matter of fact, they'll probably come out, 4th or 5th in the rankings when they come out tomorrow. But I have Alabama number 6. I have Utah number 7. They have a couple decent wins, including Washington, this past week on the road, which is a good win. Their only loss was to Southern Cal, at Southern Cal. So they deserve the spot. And assuming they win out along with Oregon, I think the Pac-12 championship winner really should have a space in the Final Four for the college football playoff.
We're kind of along the same lines. The only big difference there is the Georgia-Minnesota. We kind of, you haven't said Georgia yet. I haven't said Minnesota yet. As far as this, let me just stop you right there with this Tua was injured thing. That sucker was running around the field like a jackrabbit the entire game. And then they get one punt and then they zoom into his ankle. His ankle was not a problem. He scored a ton of points that game, and his defense couldn't keep LSU off the field. So that's nothing to do with his ankle. So don't sit here and tell me that they deserve to still be up there because of his ankle, or if they get a loss, it's okay. I know Alabama.com was saying we don't even care if they lose a game because we're still going to make it because we're going to say he's injured. And that's a bunch of crap.
It is.
Let me know what you think. Are we off base? We've told you our top 7 so far. We got 3 more to go. I know a lot of people are already saying you can't keep an undefeated Big Ten team out. We're not going to do that. I mean, I think the undefeated Big Ten team is going to be Ohio State.
Yep,
I think you're going to shut down Minnesota. Penn State still has a chance, but I think they're going to shut them down too. But so we're not neglecting the Big Ten. So our last 3, finishing out the top 10, I wanted to put Minnesota higher, but they don't really have statistically the best offense in the world. They have a really good defense. And I don't know. I think you put Baylor's, the Minnesotas, the Penn States of the world, the Oregons of the world. I think you could lump them all together and they'd probably come out 50% in their win-loss record. If they were all in the same conference. I think it's a toss up, pick one out of the hat type of teams. Mm-hmm. So I've got Baylor 8, Minnesota 9, and Penn State 10, because I think they're just really even.
Sure, yeah, and I actually have Baylor at number 8. They continue to squeak by teams, and they actually should have lost to TCU this past week, and I think they ended up winning in triple overtime, but that's what good teams do. They find a way to win. Baylor's still undefeated, so right now I've got to give them a little bit of love. I have them at number 8. Oklahoma, I have at number 9. I still don't have them as a great team. They lost to a good Kansas State team on the road. I almost made the comeback there. They had what some people are calling a controversial onside kick. I'm saying no way. But, they can help their cause with a win over Baylor and get back in the hunt. They play Baylor this week, and I think they're actually going to there's a good chance they win that game. But we'll get to that later when we kind of get to our spread picks. Number 10, I don't know if you've noticed, I have not mentioned Georgia yet. All right. I have Georgia at number 10. And the reason why, they had the win against Florida, like you said, but they lost to a pathetic South Carolina team that just got beat by App State at home. Okay. Georgia lost at home to this team. who may not even make a bowl game. That is unforgivable, and that's why I have them at 10. However, I say that knowing they still control their own destiny getting to the playoff. All they have to do is win the SEC championship game, and they're in. But right now, they deserve to be really no higher than number 10, if you ask me.
But yeah, like I said, Baylor, Minnesota, Penn State, Florida, Oklahoma, Auburn, Michigan, you just throw all those teams in a hat and pick one, and I think they could win any given day at this point. That's it for our first segment of the night. We hope you enjoyed it. We're going to take a quick 30-second break, and we'll be back to talk our Week 12 picks against the spread. So hang tight with us. All right, welcome back to the Morgan Thomas Show with my co-host, Big Al, Allen Adams. Al, let's get to segment number 2, and that's our Week 12 picks against the spread. Before I do that, though, I wanted to pull up our rankings right now, our win-loss record. Right now, Al, you're 156-100. That's your win-loss. And I am 149-107. So I'm first, and you're first, and I'm fifth. I'm 58%. You're 61% against the spread, which I think is pretty good against the spread, to be honest with you. We do ACC games, and we do big or top 25 games. So that's all encompassing of those types of games. But on the show, we talk to you ACC games and top 25 versus top 25 teams. And we're going to run through it here. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Born ready, my man. So we're going to start with the ACC. First game on the slate, North Carolina at Pittsburgh. Now, remember, I always give this disclaimer. It's Monday night. So the spread just came out. If you're watching this or listening to this or listening on the radio or podcast, it could be Thursday night, could be Friday night. The spread may have changed. Just keep that in mind. But this is the spread as of this show, live show Monday night. Pitt is giving -4.5. What you got in that game?
Well, the Coastal. It's one of those Coastal games again, okay? Look, both had a week off, and Pitt, has been impossible to figure out all year. But I'm going to take the home team to cover and take Pittsburgh -4.5 points against the Tar Heels.
I like that. Both teams didn't play this week, so they had a week to kind of prep for this game.
Yep.
Pitt has won 4 of their last 5, but UNC seems to win every other week. And they lost the last time they came out. So this is their week to win, Al. They've played Virginia close. They played Virginia Tech close. Pitt has a better rushing defense, which I love to look at. Yeah. But UNC really passes a ton, and Pitt doesn't really do good against the pass. Sam Howell has over 2,000 yards passing now. So I'm going to take North Carolina plus the points on this. They're going to play them close, and I need that extra couple points because North Carolina may very well lose by stepping out of bounds with 1 second left. But I think that 4.5 points is going to help me in the long run. So I'm going with North Carolina. Next up is an off game, Alabama State at Florida State. Florida State really needs this, but it's not really so much about this week as it is they went to Boston College and won that game, a game that you and I picked that they would not win because it's an away game, because Boston College has a better offense. But they pulled it out and got a win under all the controversy that's going on with the team. We believe that they're going to beat Alabama State, so we're going to go ahead and say that. But were you impressed by what they did up in Boston College?
I was actually. Now, I don't think Boston College is some great team or anything like that, but I thought they had been playing a little bit better offensively, especially. And I really thought Florida State was just going to kind of fold up the tent after they fired Willie Taggart. I saw a kind of player. I think they went out for the rest of the season, kind of just some mysterious injury. I thought it was kind of just I'm going to lay low for the rest of the season kind of deal. So I thought they'd fold up shop, but hey, they came out with an impressive win, did a good job. I think Boston College made a comeback in that game, but couldn't quite pull it off. So yeah, good win for Florida State, and I'm taking them this week as well, of course. Another
ACC matchup. This one, maybe not as cut and dry as you think. Virginia Tech travels to Atlanta to play Georgia Tech. Virginia Tech's one of those teams. This might be their championship phase. Eye on the prize. We just got to win out. And they could become your Coastal Division champions. What you got? Virginia Tech -5.5.
Look, Georgia Tech is actually surprising me with how much better they're playing here lately. They took Virginia to the wire. I think it was, a 5-point game or something like that on Saturday when the spread was, I think, -16. So that was a shocker for sure. But they've been doing much better. They haven't been getting a ton of wins. Yeah, they did have that win against Miami, but they haven't been getting a lot more wins. Still playing better. The Hokies are making a strong push, trying to get to the championship game, like you said. And I usually don't like to take the Hokies, but they're playing better football, and I think they found a little something. So I'm going to go with the Hokies to cover -5.5.
Okay, I like that. And I also picked the Hokies as well. I mean, if Pittsburgh can go down there and beat Georgia Tech by 10, Now, I know Georgia Tech kept Virginia within 5, so that was kind of my uh-oh. They played a good team close, but Virginia seems to be on the downslope right now.
Yeah.
And may end up losing that number 1 coastal spot by the end of everything. Virginia Tech has a harder road, but Virginia may lose it. I'm going to go with Virginia Tech in this case. I think that they go down and probably beat Georgia Tech by 10. So give me minus 5.5. I think they'll clear that. I think they can win by 1 touchdown for sure. There's another one that's kind of hard for me. Syracuse at Duke. Syracuse, has a terrible defense. Got some injuries on that and they've lost a lot on the offensive line. Don't really have an identity offensively. But Duke as well is having a lot of trouble offensively. David Cutcliffe came out and said he didn't know what's going on with their offense. But Duke is minus 11 at home. That's kind of a scary number when it's double digits.
It is a scary number for sure, and they really disappointed me with a poor showing against Notre Dame. It's a game that I thought they could go in there and keep close. I thought their offense was going to be able to score some points on Notre Dame because you know how I feel about Notre Dame. I always think they're overrated a little bit every year for sure. But, call me a glutton for punishment because I'm going to take the Blue Devils again minus the points to cover against Syracuse.
Duke's lost 3 in a row, but they played some pretty decent teams. Notre Dame, UNC, Virginia. They're having a hard time scoring, as I said. They haven't scored over 20 points in over a month, which they're supposed to be a pretty decent offense, but they haven't been clicking it at all. Some of these games, I think it's one game was 7 points, one game was 14, one game was 17. They just can't really figure it out. Syracuse is that team, though, to get them back on track because Syracuse lets anybody score. My question is, can Syracuse keep it within 2 touchdowns? And I'm going to go with the underdog on this one now. I'm going to give me Syracuse plus the 11. I don't think with the way Duke can't figure it out right now, I don't think that they're going to win by 13 or 14. So give me Syracuse to lose, but Syracuse to cover. So that's what I'm going with there. Next up is Louisville at NC State. Before I get into that, though, Dan May asked a question about Clemson and Clemson versus Wake Forest. Dan, hold that thought, my man. We're going to talk about that specific question in segment number 3. So just hold on to it. We're going to answer that question. But the next game is Louisville at NC State. Louisville minus 3.5. This one, does NC State even have a team anymore?
Yeah, who really knows? Louisville has really disappointed me a little bit lately. I kind of thought they had their offense rolling a little bit. I kind of took them 2 weeks in a row, and I think they failed me both weeks. So I'm still going to take them, though. NC State, I'm going to say, is beaten up by the Clemson loss. I mean, Clemson obviously just hammered them this weekend. I think they had a couple of players dinged up coming out of that. So I'm going to take Louisville minus 3.5. Hopefully they can finally get me a win and get that spread total, up one more for me.
You're not going to get away from me on this one, Al. I'm going to pick Louisville as well. I think one play when I saw Clemson get a first down, and all of a sudden, 16 players were hurt on the field at NC State. I think they were all starters. A couple of I think they're basically playing some of their practice dummies right now out on the field. So NC State is a shell of what it used to be. Let's get into our ranked versus ranked, and we're going to hold the Clemson, the last ACC game, to segment number 3. But our ranked versus ranked, this is a fun one. Veterans Day. We're enjoying honoring our veterans today. And let's talk about number 24, Navy. I think these are old ranking numbers because ESPN was going by AP poll, and now Monday they're going by the football committee, and it hasn't updated till Tuesday night. So if my rankings are wrong, just forgive me there. But Navy at Notre Dame minus 9.5. What you got there?
Look, Notre Dame's been playing pretty well lately. Again, after they kind of made me look bad with, I think they beat Duke something like 38-7 this past weekend. It was not pretty. The Irish did very well, which I hate to see. But, even though Navy's given them a little trouble in the past, I just don't think this is the Navy team we've seen in the past. So I'm going to take the Irish to roll in this one and cover the spread.
I think you're crazy, Alan. I'm calling you on this one. This is one where we disagree. The midshipmen, Alan, you said they're not like what they used to be. They're not like what they used to be because they've passed 53 times this year. And last year they had only passed 25 times by the end of the season. So they've more than doubled their passing attempts. That's why they're not the same, but they're still clicking 42.4 points per game. Not so fast. If I had my Lee Corso pencil, not so fast on this one. I think If you give me 9.5, Navy loves to play Notre Dame close. Mm-hmm. Notre Dame, not just an average team, even though they have a number above their name, just an average team. And I think Navy goes in there, and I think Navy keeps it close. I'm not saying that Notre Dame won't win, but I think that Navy has the ability to run against anybody, as we know, but now they're able to pass a little bit more than they used to. So you got to watch out for that. I'm going to give me the veterans. And that 9.5, I will take it. Go midshipman on that one. 17 Minnesota at 18 Iowa. Iowa minus 2.5.
Yeah, look, plain and simple, give me the Golden Gophers after their big win, and a good offense against Penn State. Good offensive showing anyways against Penn State, who supposedly had a pretty good defense. I'm going to take Minnesota to take this one. I think they're going to get the outright win actually at Iowa, which is it's kind of crazy. I like to bet on Iowa a lot of times, but they're just not impressing me like I thought they would at the beginning of the year. So I'm going to take the Golden Gophers.
I will tell you this, 2.5. I know Iowa plays teams close, but they play bad teams close. I think Minnesota is better of a team than they have faced, even though it's in Iowa and it's a tough road game for sure. But are you kidding me? Give me Minnesota and the points. The Gophers might be coming off an emotional win. They might get that emotional win letdown, but I don't see it, man. They have their eyes on the prize. It's the championship phase. They see it ahead of them. They can't let down. And I think they go in there and, I'm going to take that 2.5 points for sure. After that, I think they have Northwestern, which, give me a Northwestern in the ACC. Yeah. Give me a Vanderbilt. Give me a Tennessee. Well, maybe not a Tennessee. Give me a South Carolina in the SEC or the ACC. I'd take them. But number 9, Oklahoma at number 12, Baylor. This is a big deal, Al, because Oklahoma, they're still trying to keep their hopes alive. Baylor, I believe, still undefeated after squeaking out that one this weekend. Yep. So Oklahoma, though, it's a home game, double-digit underdog for Baylor. Oklahoma minus 10.
Yeah, I'm not overly impressed by either team. I know they were kind of at the bottom half of my top 10. So I say not overly impressed. They're good teams, don't get me wrong. But they're not college playoff caliber teams, in my opinion. So I think Baylor has really played to their competition a lot this year. I'm going to take a motivated team at home to cover and kind of prove the nation wrong. So I think Oklahoma is going to win the game, unfortunately for them. I think they're going to kind of spoil the home crowd victory for them. But I'm going to take the Baylor Bears cover.
Not so fast. Something's up with Oklahoma's defense. They're starting to give away 40 points like it's everybody, like it's Halloween candy. Winning at home by only 1 point against Iowa State, making me worried. You know how I feel about 1 point losses, wins, 1 point wins, 1 point loss. You know how I feel about those 1 point games. I'm so chapped this year about a 1 point game. If Clemson wins the national championship, I'm putting up a tombstone in my backyard of that NC State or the UNC game. I'm telling you that because I'm so mad about that 1 point loss that Clemson didn't have. Rest in peace, that game. But I'm going to take Baylor in this case. I don't think that Baylor wins. I think that they have a good enough offense to hang with Oklahoma, a little bit better of a defense than Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to go with that. 10 points for me is just enough. Vegas got me on this one. 10 points is just enough for me to take 10
it. 10 points. Did you just not so fast me and agree with me?
Yes. I did. I'm Lee Corso right here. I'm
just
Lee
wanted
Corso.
To make sure.
And the last game we have coming up, this is what they say, the big game, because it's the SEC game. I know a lot of my friends in church are going to say, what is Morgan going to pick here? It's the Dogs. Number 6, Georgia at number 11, Auburn. Georgia -3. So a little bit of a favorite going in. So Auburn's a little bit of an underdog at home. What do you think?
Look, I think Auburn knocks off the Bulldogs, out of the top 10 here. I think they get them out of the top 10 totally. They make the committee sweat wondering which SEC team to put in the playoff if Georgia were to come back and win the SEC championship with 2 losses. But I think Auburn knocks them off this weekend for sure. And I think they're going to have a tough time over there on the Plains. But it should be – I hope it's a good game, but I think Auburn gets the victory. I'm taking Auburn plus the 2.5, get the outright victory.
All right, you picked Auburn plus the point.
Plus 2.5, that's correct.
To win.
That's right.
Not so fast, Alan. Not so fast. I'm telling you right now. I just wanted to confirm. Not so fast. Auburn runs everything. Everything goes through the running game for them. Georgia has a really good running defense. Georgia was able to show what they could do against Florida. Georgia, again, eyes are on the prize. They're ready to go. They're going to keep pushing towards that SEC championship game. But I think that they knock out Auburn in this case. I don't really like Bo Nix. I don't think he can win tight games. I think this is going to be a close game. I think Georgia can win by more than a field goal, though. So give me Georgia, maybe 2 field goals in that case. Right. And for all the Dog fans, Stephanie, Evan, and Cassie, if you're watching, go Dogs. All right, everyone, we have to take a quick break. Stay with us. When we get back, we're going to go over our review and preview of your Clemson Tigers and what they're going to do this week and what they did last week. Remember to check us out, The Morgan Thomas Show on Facebook, YouTube, The Roar, and wherever you listen to a podcast. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back to The Morgan Thomas Show with my co-host, Big Al, Alan Adams. Segment number 3, let's get into it, starting with the Clemson review. And that was Clemson just destroying a team that really barely has any players left. And like Mark Packer said over on at Packer and Durham, it's a good thing that Clemson had in a road game because they only brought 75 players. Well, actually, he said it was a bad thing that it was a road game because they only brought 75. So thankfully that Clemson only played some of their 75 best. But maybe if it was a home game for Clemson, they would have paid maybe their 115 players, and NC State wouldn't have had to play their 75 best players. But so it was kind of a joke there. But yeah, Clemson definitely handled NC State. And people, man, the media just cannot give Clemson a break. It is like they win a game by 1 point, and it's, why can't you win a game by more than that? Everybody else is winning a game by more than that. They win a game. They win 3 games in a row by 50, and everybody's like, oh, Dabo, why in the world are you running it up on everybody? How dare you? You're supposed to be a Christian. What's your problem? And that's just ridiculous, man. Clemson gets the worst double standards of any team I've ever seen, and it's just driving me nuts. Now, as Clemson fans, what does everybody tell us? Oh, Clemson doesn't need to worry about the rankings. Clemson fans need to just get over it. They are not disrespected. They just need to win out. You can still need to win out and be disrespected.
Sure.
That's my point. You can still be in your position and be in control of your own destiny and complain about being disrespected. Everybody acts like we can't have it both ways. We can have it both ways because it is that way.
Sure.
All right. I'm off my soapbox again. But again, going back to last week, Al, the helmet stickers are the best offense and best defensive player or players or, performance or, Alan, I don't even know how you describe it, but it's not just a player and stats. So Who do you got?
Well, for offense, I have Trevor Lawrence. I mean, goodness gracious, the guy has been on fire lately. He went 20 for 27, 276 yards, 3 touchdowns, and most importantly, no interceptions. Okay, he's kind of got a bad rap for his interceptions early in the year, several games into the year, in fact. But he's been doing much better lately, seeing the field better, making better decisions. He also added 8 rushes for 59 yards, so he definitely got a helmet sticker for me. Awesome performance. We need to see more of the same going forward.
Now, when you texted me this, I was baffled. I was like, you text me first so you could get in your picks first. I get it.
That's right.
I get it. I like that. I admired that. But you didn't pick Travis Etienne? I was like, why?
I've already picked him too much. I wanted to let you have a shot at him.
Okay. That starts to make sense to me because Travis Etienne now has a total of 500, a total of 54 touchdowns, which is a school record, by the way. He now has 50 rushing touchdowns, ties Lamar Jackson for rushing touchdowns. Hey, kind of a good player, right?
Yeah.
He's 2 away from tying James Conner, another really good player from Pittsburgh, for 52 touchdowns. That's the ACC record for touchdowns. I want to see Travis Etienne break the ACC record. I know he will. He's got 2 games left. He should. He only needs 3 touchdowns. I think he's going to get it.
Sure.
But let's break the record. Let's break the record, Travis. We love you. We want to see more of you. We want to see that ball in the end zone with number 9 on the jersey. So I want to see a Clemson running back leading the way in the ACC all-time record, and that's going to be you, Travis. And we've just enjoyed watching Travis Etienne grow up these past 3 years from, a little old 3-star, little old 3.5 or 2.5 star out of Jennings to now preseason Heisman candidate, and eventually, we believe, I'm pulling for him to be the all-time ACC rushing touchdown leader. But I got Travis Etienne. I mean, he did awesome. So I have to say that. Well, who do you got on defense?
I actually took Logan Rudolph on defense. I don't think anybody in particular really stood out to me on defense. They all did pretty well. All had a good game, obviously. He had one sack and a tackle for loss. The announcers were even showing him some love, when they talked about how Brent Venables loves his motor. It's a guy we've been hearing about for the last couple of preseasons about how this guy has a nonstop motor. He doesn't have quite the measurables that Clemson really looks for in a defensive end. They usually like the long, lean type of frame, and that's not really him. He's a little bit on the shorter side, a little stockier. But it's really good to see some on-field production from this kid. We've been hearing about it, but he hasn't really shown up in games too much. But he's starting to turn on a little bit, and I'm hoping that continues.
Yeah, I actually fell into that problem of I could not pick one player. I mean, you've got a lot of players just doing awesome on the defense. So many different turnovers in the game. I believe Tyler Davis got one. Chad Smith got one. Who else got a fumble? What was his name? Tyler Boyd.
Yeah, I saw that. I'm like, who is that?
For the special teams.
Yeah.
So a lot of players got in and got their fumble recovery on the game. So I was really impressed by that. So I'm going with the entire Tiger defense. That was another game that they held a team to under 300 yards. This is what Dan was asking us before. Dan Mayover earlier on the YouTube channel was saying, what do we think? Are they going to continue that? It's going to be tough against Wake Forest for sure. We'll get into that a little bit further. But at least for now, let's enjoy another game. Wolfpack finished with 290 yards, 10th game this year for 300 yards or less. And so that's my Tiger helmet sticker for the defense, the entire defense. I'm going to need a lot of stickers for that. As far as our best player of the other team, the $2 bill, that's what we give for the best player of the other team. And I'm going to go with Zonovan Knight. He actually is a true freshman, running back, 12 carries, 139 yards. The longest was a 53-yarder, a little bit later in the game, I believe. But true freshman, and he had his best game of the year against Clemson, 20 yards more than his previous game high. So good job there, Zonovan Knight. I believe he did have one touchdown as well. So got that score in for the Wolfpack.
Yeah, Zonovan Knight took that 53-yarder to the house when that was the first drive of the second half, actually. So started NC State off on the right foot.
That's
Unfortunately, they were down 42-0, so it didn't really matter. My $2 bill actually goes to Trenton Gill. He had 5 opportunities to punt. He would have had several more if it weren't for the 4 fumbles. I mean, this guy was killing it. He averaged 52.2 yards a punt. That is absolutely outstanding. Will Spires actually had a great day punting for Clemson. He averaged over 46 yards, yards a punt, which is great for him. I think his average is usually down there closer to 40, 42, something like that. So he did a great job in the NC State game as well. So it's good to see that from him, but 52.2 is impressive. So Trenton Gill gets my $2 bill.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So let's get into the game coming up this weekend. This was one that was supposed to be 2 ranked teams versus each other, but Wake Forest just dropped the ball big time against Virginia Tech. And I didn't get a chance to watch the game, but I heard on Packer and Durham this morning that they had some Sage Surratt got injured, had a hand injury. I don't know if he's going to be available for the Clemson game, but Jamie Newman wasn't able to get the offense going. Virginia Tech seemed to find a rhythm there. And like we said earlier, Virginia Tech seems to be on that championship phase and got their eyes on that Coastal Division championship, or that division title. But Sage Surratt is the brother of Chaz Surratt, so that kind of gives him a little bit of good luck because, Chaz did really awesome against Clemson on the defense. But again, Etienne, I'm looking for him to eye that ACC rushing record. And again, like Dan said, can Clemson hold the team to under 300 yards? Can they do it? Wake is averaging 487 yards or 87.3 yards per game. So to me, it's not so much can Clemson win the game, because I believe we all think that they can win the game. I mean, they're 33.5-point favorites right now. So I think that we all know Clemson's going to win the game. I don't think it's, especially it being a home game. Think about this. This is the last home game, Al, for Overton. Yep. Last home game for Wallace, Kayvon Wallace, Tremaine Akram, John Simpson, Sean Pollard. Man, thank you so much, seniors, for that. And a ton of juniors. Ton of juniors out there that might not make it back for their senior year because they're going to go to the pros. I'm thinking T. Higgins, maybe A.J. Terrell, maybe Travis Etienne. James Skalski just came out and said he's staying, so he'll be back. But then you got Isaiah Simmons. Ooh, that just hurts to say.
I know.
It just hurts to say, but he's a redshirt junior, and he'd be ready to leave this year after this season's over with. So got a lot of guys we got to get to say goodbye to, a lot of championship winners, some of the best seniors to ever play the game at Clemson. So we never want to forget what they did to bring this team to where they are. So thank you so much, seniors and redshirt juniors who may not be playing any more games in Death Valley after this Saturday. But Al, again, what's the question here? The question is, can they keep it under 300 yards and finish out the year strong? What do you think? They got 2 games left to keep it under 300 yards for the season per team.
Yeah, that's going to be really tough. That's a tall task. I think they can. I think they'll be able to move the ball a little bit. Wake Forest. Everybody wants to talk about how good their passing game is. I don't know if you remember this last week, but we had the conversation. I was talking about Wake Forest. Yeah, they're putting up a lot of offense, but look who they're putting it up against. I don't know if you remember this, but from last week, do you remember who the number 1 defense they played was? I asked you this last week, and you said Florida State. And I had to tell you it was NC State. Look,
no,
NC State.
No, it wasn't NC State, was it? It wasn't
NC State.
You told me NC Rice.
State. No, that's the second team.
Oh, okay.
Rice is the second best defensive team they faced. NC State was the first. I asked you the first simply so I could say Rice is the second, okay? Because that's kind of a more eye-popping stat there. But NC State was the best defense they faced, and they were in the mid-40s. I'm sure after last week they're not in the mid-40s anymore. They're probably in the 50s or 60s right now after Clemson did that to them this past weekend. So Wake Forest has faced no defense this year, none whatsoever. I just don't think they face anybody that's going to come anywhere close to the caliber of Clemson's. So is there a chance they can keep them under 300? Sure there is. But, still, you got to give them credit for what they've done, and they have put a lot of points on the board. They have done well in the passing game for sure. So I think there's a chance that Clemson can hold them under 300. I wouldn't hold my breath, but I don't think they're going to score a lot of points. I think it's one of those things where they may get a little through the air, but I think Clemson's going to kind of, stiffen up in the red zone or kind of when they get across the 50, that kind of thing. I didn't want to be right. I didn't want to be right taking the Hokies against Wake Forest to win the game. I wanted Wake to be ranked coming into Death Valley. Everybody wanted that, wanted the big, ranked on ranked night home atmosphere. But they weren't able to take care of business. Actually, matter of fact, Virginia Tech kind of beat them pretty good. If I remember correctly, I can't remember what the final was, 30-something to 16 or 17, I think it was. Wake's passing yards were really to one player. Kendall Hinton had 8 catches for 162 yards. That's insane. That's a really good game, averaging over 20 yards a catch for sure. So they only had 29 rushing yards for the game. Okay, 29 rushing yards total. That is absolutely pathetic. I don't think. Look, I love Clemson defense as much as anybody, and their defense on rushing and passing has been good this year. But I don't think that's going to happen again this week, even though I think Clemson defense is obviously better, than Virginia Tech's. But that's just kind of an anomaly. You don't just normally get 29 rushing yards. So I don't expect that to happen again. But, I think Lawrence just needs to continue to do what he's doing, making good decisions, hitting the open guys. They kind of use the whole field and get into his checkdowns and that kind of thing. Etienne, I'm looking for him to have another big game. I really want him to bless 2 big runs. He used to do that all the time. I'm talking about 40-yard plus runs. So I want him to break some records and get to them quick. So I look for a big game from those 2 guys again, just like all the receivers are going to get some love too. So it's going to be a good game and a good way for the seniors to go out in the Valley. Virginia
Tech right now, but they held Wake Forest to 301 yards that game. Like you said, rushing, I believe you said 29 yards.
Yeah.
Which is, terrible. You got to think, if Virginia Tech can hold Wake Forest to 301, then you got to think there's hope there for Clemson to continue their streak. Hope. There's a lot of hope. I think that actually gives some big-time hope for Clemson. So I'm going to go ahead and answer your question, Dan. I think that based on that information that Virginia Tech just did it, the fact that Sage Surratt, I just looked it up as well, Sage has a shoulder injury, and Clausen is not disclosing it. He said he's not going to say anything until game time. So I think it's a little bit more serious than he wants to admit, or maybe he's kind of holding it close to the chest there. So their biggest playmaker as far as a wide receiver out more than likely, or at least hurt big time with his shoulder. And I wouldn't be surprised if this defense holds this team again to no more than 17 points and under 300 yards. So give me Clemson minus the points.
Sure. Yeah, and I don't necessarily disagree with much of what you said there. I think the fact that Wake Forest is a passing team, and I think that does play to Clemson's strength with Terrell and Kendrick, out there on the corner for sure. Isaiah Simmons going to be roaming all around the field. I think, Britt Venables is going to line up a good game plan, drop some linebackers into coverage, show some pressure, back out of it, kind of have some linebackers leak out into those underneath passing lanes and kind of stop some of those passes that they're used to getting. So I think Clemson's going to have a big day. I already talked about the offense. I'm taking Clemson minus 33.5 as well. My final score prediction is Clemson 62, Wake Forest 13.
We hope you enjoyed watching and listening to our show tonight. Please check us out, Facebook, YouTube, The Roar Radio on Thursday nights, and anywhere you listen to podcasts. That's it for this week. I'm Morgan Thomas.
And I'm Alan Adams.
And we'll check you out next week. Have a good week, Tiger fans. We'll see you at the top of the hill.